The Dakota is one of the most iconic aircraft deployed during the Second World War. It's not a fighter or a bomber, but was a military transport aircraft used extensively by the Allies during the conflict to perform many different types of operation. Be it a mere transport mission, towing gliders, or be it taking paratroopers over to Normandy to drop on D-Day, the Dakota was a reliable aircraft. Today it's one of the most revered aircraft of the Second World War, but today we look at an air crash which remarkably led to no fatalities, despite a Dakota crashing onto a roof of a house. So join us today as we look at the strange 1946 Railway Air Service Dakota crash. Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe.
Oh, look at that.
Its display here illustrating something of the fact that the DC-3 and C-47 didn't just drone around straight and level, it also had to have a certain degree of manoeuvrability.
The Dakota, or Douglas C-47 Skytrain, was a military variation of the transport aircraft developed from the civilian Douglas DC-3 airliner. It differed in a number of different ways to a DC-3, for example being fitted with a cargo door, hoist attachment and a stronger strengthened floor. During World War II, many different countries would use C-47s or DC-3s to transport a vast amount of cargo, equipment and even troops. They would even be used to transport the wounded back home, and over 10,000 were produced. So the Dakota was extremely important to many of the Allied campaigns. For example, at Bastogne in Belgium, it would be used to airlift supplies to the encircled American forces who were dug in during the freezing winter, surrounded by the Germans. In Europe, the specialised paratroop variant of the Dakota was used in huge numbers at the latter stages of the conflict, being able to tow gliding aircraft and also being capable of dropping paratroopers. During the invasion of Sicily, they dropped over 4,000 Allied paratroopers, and during the first days of the invasion of Normandy and D-Day, more than 50,000 paratroopers were dropped into France from the aircraft. They were also used in the Pacific Theatre to ferry soldiers to and from the United States. Because of how good they were as transport aircraft, they were deployed after the war, and some even remain in service today, in Colombia, El Salvador and South Africa. However, in the year following the Second World War, a rather bizarre crash would occur featuring the Dakota. On the 19th of December 1946, a crash would happen that saw one of these huge planes somehow land on someone's roof, and even more amazingly, no one would die in the incident. The Dakota involved made its first flight as a military transport aircraft in the United States Air Force, and then was transferred to the Royal Air Force. In May 1946, this aircraft was then registered to the Railway Air Service under the registration number GAGZA. On the 19th of December 1946, this Dakota was ready to depart from Northolt Aerodrome in London to embark on a scheduled service to Glasgow Airport on behalf of Scottish Airways. On board were a total crew of 4 and just one passenger. The weather was rather bitter and cold, and the aircraft had been de-iced before as it was a snowy evening, and this whole process had delayed the departure time of the aircraft. The Dakota was waiting on the runway, and the temperature was dropping with snow beginning to fall heavier, which subsequently then froze on the wings. The plane was finally ready, following de-icing, and was ready for takeoff. It taxied along the runway of Northolt in position for its takeoff. The snowstorm was getting worse and had closed the airport to incoming traffic as the plane was about to leave, and the planes heading outbound were also subject to long delays. The Dakota heading for Glasgow had already been waiting over an hour for clearance, and when it was received, the pilot ran the engines up to 45.5 inches of manifold pressure and to 2,500 revs per minute. As the pilot accelerated down the runway with the snow beating down, he noticed that when the plane was trying to lift off, it wasn't gaining any height. This was a huge problem. The ice on the wings had caused the airflow to be disturbed, which meant that the plane couldn't gain any height. At this time, however, it was too late to abort the takeoff, and the crew was forced to try and get the aircraft to climb. The situation looked rather dire for the crew on board, as they were forced with trying to get the Dakota to climb in perilous conditions with an aircraft which wasn't working as planned. They tried their hardest to get the aircraft to climb, however tragedy struck. The plane flew only a few metres high, and it flew straight down the road next to the runway called Angus Drive. At the end of the runway, the left wing smashed into some rooftops. Such was how low the aircraft was flying, and the aircraft slewed through 90 degrees and somehow came to rest on the roofs of 2 houses. The people living in 44 and 46 Angus Drive in the London suburb of South Ruislip would have heard an almighty crash and would have left their homes to see a huge Dakota sitting on the roofs of their homes. The aircraft was heavily damaged and the radio officer was extremely lucky. At the time he wasn't sitting in his seat, but on the impact some metalwork was pushed through the seat, which will have killed him should he have been sitting there properly. Apparently when the aircraft came to rest on the roof, it didn't wake up a child who was asleep in the house in his cot upstairs. Remarkably, no one was injured, and the crew and the passenger all came out of the Dakota and descended back to the street by the loft in one of the houses and left by the front door. The Dakota was a complete loss and wreck, and the house was damaged but not greatly, and allegedly it's now known today as Dakota's Rest. An investigation was of course launched, and it was found that the snow had frozen on the aircraft's wings, which resulted in it not managing to achieve height. Another issue was highlighted that the pilot failed to abort takeoff after noticing that the plane was covered in snow, and subsequently the captain gained the nickname Rooftop Johnson. How no one died in the Dakota when it crashed into the houses on Angus Drive is a mystery, and it's sheer luck that no one in the homes was badly injured either. It's a strange story revolving around the dangers of inclement weather when it comes to aviation. However, it certainly is an interesting story that deserves telling. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching.